and my fish oil.
Okay. So maybe another day we seem to need, I think, another 100 webinars to talk about everything we want to talk about.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes, we do. But I can't live without my supplements. I will tell you that.
Oh, neither can I.
So I thought I didn't realize you caught me on camera popping supplements, but there, my brain needs it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So one more minute and we are going to start.
You count down.
Yeah. So we've already started recording. So
maybe I'll just,
we'll just start.
I'll just start our introduction.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Natasha Iyer here with Dr. Shabnam Daskar. She's the Director of Medical Education for Better, a Center for Complete Living, which is where we both practice functional medicine. In addition, Dr. Carr has a very large consulting practice internationally. So it's always a pleasure and it's always a mountain of information that I get from her. So I love doing webinars with her. So today is part 4, the final part of our heart disease series, because it is Heart Month, February. And I didn't dress up like Dr. Carr today. And I'm not sure about all of you who join webinars, but I assume that you all wear, you know, your comfy clothes at home. And last week when I had my little red coat on, see, Dr. Carr and I, we do our study club on Wednesday mornings. And so we are usually not dressed well for a webinar. So I don't know if you do that, wear your like sweatpants below and put your nice top on top just to look good. I know you're very shy, so you're not going to stand up and show us what you got going on. But I will tell you one thing. If you ever catch Dr. Carr and I on a study club, this is classically what I am doing and she's doing, and we stand and we move while we don't sit the entire time when we're on a webinar. And the reason you can see my yoga mat behind me. I keep weights in my office. I've been known to hand them to patients when they're sitting here with me. And the biggest thing I wanted to mention, which has nothing to do with today's webinar, but everything to do with your heart health, is sitting disease. Sitting disease, if you've seen it on the cover of Time magazine, it was all over the news some years ago, and they say sitting disease is worse than smoking. Man was not designed to sit for prolonged periods of time. If you wear a tracker, I wear an Oura ring, I think you wear a Fitbit or a Garmin, whatever it is, you know, these things remind you, an Apple Watch, they remind you to keep moving. And I will invite you that during the webinar, you stand, you know, you can squat, you can take water bottles and do different things, but do something in. Unfortunately, I have to sit or you won't see me. And the goal is for us to deliver information to you. But sitting disease releases inflammatory markers. It definitely contributes to accelerated aging. And I encourage you to not sit for very long.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Carr. Now
Thank
today,
you.
we have like the best of the best topic, because I am so certain that no one has done a webinar like this on this topic to do with heart disease. I'm certain of it.
That is a tall order. So I am Dr. Shabnam Daskar. I'm a functional medicine doctor. And I was an OBGY for many years. In fact, it was many years ago. So I've not been doing any deliveries or surgeries, but I am much more excited about medicine today, just as Dr. Iyer is. And today's topic is toxins and the heart. So just an overview of what we are going to talk about. First and foremost, which are the toxins that are most harmful for the heart? Obviously, you need to know. And where are they coming from? And next part, which is actually more important, is how will you know whether you have those toxins that are impacting your health? And most importantly, Dr. Iyer and I want to focus on what are the things you can do for yourself. Yes, there is a lot you can do when you come to a practitioner like Dr. Iyer or me. But in addition to that, see, you know, health does not happen in the doctor's office. There is a lot you can do in addition to, you know, the medical stuff. So without taking up any more time, so Dr. Iyer, over to you. Where do most of the harmful toxins, particularly for the heart? And you'll understand that there's nothing exclusively which harms the heart and doesn't harm the brain or doesn't harm some other part of the body.
So I will tell you this. I have seen multiple posts on social media, and I've had many doctors be very dismissive of this concept of toxic molecules or toxins. And there are many fitness trainers, nutritionists, many medical doctors who will absolutely scoff at this. And they go, what is this? What kind of gimmick is a detox? And so first of all, what are toxins? You know, Tylenol is a toxin.
Yes, it can be.
A lot of things are toxins. It depends on the dose, right? So what we always say is the poison.
The dose decides the poison?
The dose decides whether it's a poison or not.
Well, Natasha, I will disagree, because with some of the EDCs, even a minor
There is no dose. There is no dose. That's right. But I'm just trying to start the concept that there are a lot of things in our day-to-day medical world. Like for example, Tylenol depletes the liver of glutathione. Glutathione is a very critical master antioxidant that helps your body get rid of these toxins we're going to talk about. So Tylenol by itself, people pop left, right, and center, yet it's causing depletions and the ability to collect more toxins. And I want you to just remember that, because, you know, I have this one point to make a little later about why do some people collect more toxins than others. Right? And part of it is these other things going on in your life. So what is a toxin? A toxin is something that gets in the way of your body working as it should and gives you a negative reaction, not necessarily killing you. Because usually when you think, oh, it's a toxin, he ingested a poison, so he's going to die. Right? No, we're not talking about that. So Dr. Carr mentioned something called EDCs. This is really important that you spend time researching on your own, because we've talked a bit in other webinars, and so we're going to minimize the talk on endocrine disrupting chemicals, EDC. These are everywhere, and they get in the way of your hormones working. So today is a perfect follow-up to last week when we were talking about hormones. Well, here are chemicals in your day-to-day living that you're surrounded by that will get in the way of your hormones working efficiently. They're found in your, and I always say, look at everything from your hair down to your toenails, right? And so your hairspray, shampoos all have chemicals that preserve or make them work well, but they're actually toxic to you. Now you're thinking, okay, but I'm washing my hair. We treat you with hormones on your skin. We use creams for hormones, and it gets into your blood and gives you a visible effect, a measurable effect. So if you can put hormones on your skin and absorb it, then anything you put on your skin, you can absorb. So we divide it into home care. So think about all the different chemicals and cleaners you have in your home, body care from your hair down to your toenails, and women have 427 more chemicals in their bloodstream at any point, not just because they clean house, but because they wear makeup and they color their hair and they do nails and eyelashes and whatever all women do. Not that I'm not a woman, but I choose not to do those. I pick my poison, and my poison is red wine and blue hair. Right? So you have to work on minimizing your toxic exposure. So home care, body care, food is critical. Think about the pesticides, the herbicides, and even that we can talk for weeks and weeks and weeks on a webinar just about food and all the things that go into, you know, we call it frankenfood, all the artificial food, the fake food, the coloring, the additives, the preservatives.
Tasha, that's not food. Those are food masqueraders.
Yes, simulated fake food. You know, and then you can go to habits and hobbies. Think about your home environment. So habits and hobbies, I find a lot of people are taking up new hobbies through the pandemic, and some of them are quite toxic. I mean, they're using solvents and cleaners. Think of artists and oil-based paints, or renovating, restoring cars, all the things that we're doing that can have significant chemical exposure. Think about occupation. I have a lot of patients who work out in the oil patch and on rigs, or they're mechanics, or, and diesel exhaust fumes are one of the worst, most toxic things to metabolic pathways in the human body, right? And when I say metabolic, I don't want you to think only of weight, by the way. I want you to think of cell metabolism. So how you make energy, how you use your brain cell, how your heart cell can cause a contraction and cause your heart to beat. Like, these are all metabolic processes that happen in your body. Definitely your environment inside your home and outside your home. Many people are living in older homes, so they're renovating, but the age of the home. Did you have a water pipe burst? I had that happen in my home, where, I'm very sensitive to mold, and I can smell things because I'm a very poor detoxifier. So I'm exquisitely sensitive to smell. And I kept saying, months after we had that flood, there's something wrong. Like, I can smell mold, and there was nothing to be seen, nothing to be found. Like, the basement got done professionally, and lo and behold, smashed a hole through the wall between the laundry room and the garage, and there it was. There was black mold in there, and I could tell. Right? So when you renovate or you move into a new home, it's all exciting, but think of the paints, the chemicals, the varnishes, the glues, there's a million chemicals. Okay, not a million, but tens of thousands of chemicals that you're getting exposed to. Now, 50, 60, 70 years ago, we did not have all of this in our world. That's why, when patients say, but my grandmother's 89 years old and she has no issues and she's so healthy. Yes, she ate food that came from the ground and it didn't get sprayed, and it was local and it was seasonal for her. Right? It was pure, good quality food. It had all the nutrients. It wasn't over farmed and depleted. It wasn't sprayed. It wasn't radiated because it came from a different country and got harvested long before it was ripened. And, so they spray it to ripen it. They spray it to protect bugs from coming from a different country into ours. They radiate it. Like, what's left in it? Not much, except they've added a whole bunch of stuff that your body's not used to seeing. On that note, your body is the same genetically and it works the same as your grandma's did 70, 80 years ago, but she didn't have jets flying overhead. She didn't have as many vehicles in the environment. Combustion from vehicles is really, really toxic and polluting to your body, never mind the environment. We can go off on all kinds of rabbit holes here, but that's the point, right? Your grandma didn't have convenience. Everything was handmade or homemade. She didn't have a cleaner for the bathtub and a different one for the kitchen sink and a different one for the tiles and a different one for the metal and this. There's something for everything. And then let's talk about laundry. Oh my goodness. I wrote a newsletter once and it said, my balls arrived, and it had a really high open rate, right? And balls, right? Dryer balls, because those fabric softener sheets are filled with VOCs, volatile organic chemicals, right? And those are also very bad for your cells and your metabolism and your hormone balance. So yes, it was very exciting for me when my balls arrived, because then I got static-free laundry and not crinkled. Okay, so there are so many toxins in the world around you, and your first effort should be to know what they are and where they come from. Another thing, cooking. Teflon, remember Dr. Carr said there are some things that have no dose. So interesting story. I'm going to bring mercury into the story right now. So I went to a doctor when my son was a year and a half, And I said, I really feel like he's got something very wrong with him, and I want him tested for heavy metals. And the reason being, I had mercury fillings from my childhood. One had cracked, and I constantly tasted metal in my mouth while I was pregnant with him. And so when he had all these developmental and neurological delays, I wanted him tested for heavy metals. And I had just started practicing in the field of bioidentical hormones. I hadn't transitioned into functional medicine at the time. And there's a big difference between the two practices, as we know, and maybe we'll explain it at some point. But, and he said to me, oh, there's no such thing. And I said, well, okay, let's just test him. So he sent my son for blood tests and urine tests and said, see, it's within normal limits. And I said, what do you mean within, you mean there's a normal limit for how much mercury you should have floating around in your body? Like, should you not have none?
And that to a kid as young as that.
Right. So certain things your body can tolerate in small amounts, and it is designed to get rid of it. But think about your body like a factory. And nowadays, we're bombarded with, so if there's a line and things can go through one at a time and be gotten rid of or disposed of by your body, now you've got hundreds and hundreds and thousands of different molecules coming at you, and your pathways that are supposed to help you get rid of these things get jammed and blocked. And then you have an accumulation of these different molecules, some of them endocrine disrupting, some are persistent organic pollutants, some are like Teflon, things that you can never get rid of from your body ever in the environment or your body. Once it's there, right?
Forever.
So your goal, yeah. Say again?
Forever chemicals.
Forever chemicals. And that's something else you need to look at, right? Because when I travel and if I book an Airbnb, I'll take my own frying pan and I'll take my own cooking pot, because I never know what I'm going to end up with. And I just won't use a Teflon pan. I will not. Right. I went to Hawaii once. I couldn't carry my own pans, so I had to buy them while I was there. Right. But that's the extent I will go through. But I'm also a more difficult case. And I always tell patients this, you know, if I hadn't gotten from bioidentical hormones into functional medicine, I would still be effed. You know, the fatigued, fat, frazzled, foggy, forgetful, miserable, fat, frumpy, forgetful person I used to be, right? Because I had high toxic burden and hormones weren't going to change my life in any way. And they weren't, right? Because here I was taking thyroid hormone, doing all these things with zero change in how dysfunctional in my health I was, right? And so moving into functional medicine and understanding what toxins are and understanding that I personally am a very poor detoxifier. What that means is my genetics, so your genes are not your destiny, first of all, which I didn't know at the time. And my mother had, you know, the joint pains, the always needing massages, achy muscles, you know, and I was like that. Everything hurt. I used to say my hair hurts. You know, I woke up every day in pain. What I didn't know was I'd reached a threshold above which now my body stopped coping with all the toxins I was being exposed to. And what this did was it got into my cells and interfered with the cell machinery because my body didn't have the genes that could work to detoxify. So let's spend a few moments on these genes of detoxification, because it affects, or it explains rather, why some people can tolerate things different from others. So for example, my dad can walk into a room that's been, actually my dad can do the painting, and he can close all the doors, have no ventilation, and he's never had a headache in his life. He's going to be 75 on the day I turn 50, and he's never had a headache before. I can walk into the room 2 weeks later after airing it out, and I will tell you immediately, my neck starts to hurt, my back aches, I start to get a headache, I start to get nauseated, and I'll say, something's wrong here. Like I can smell something. Now, my reactions are not that extreme because today I pop pills supplements, nutritional supplements that help my genes work better. My dysfunctional genes can be turned on by providing the nutrients they need to work better, which is why I am so much better today than I was 20 years ago.
Thank
Did
you.
all of that flow and make sense?
Sorry?
Did all of that flow and make sense?
Yes, it did. Thank
Okay.
you. So I brought up the slide actually a little ahead of time.
That's
so basically,
fine.
basically what this slide is showing is this is your liver, this wonderful organ, which is actually not given the importance it should be getting. But Dr. Iyer has been talking about, genes of detoxification. So we don't want to make it very complicated. You can see here something called cytochrome P450 enzymes. Now, these enzymes of detoxification every enzyme is coded by a gene. Now, some of these genes, they may have minor variations. This is not a genetic error. These are minor variations which can either enhance that particular pathway or it may make it function worse. So it doesn't function, let us say, instead of 100% capacity, it works at about 70% capacity. So that is what Dr. Iyer was talking about when she said that she probably has some of these enzyme variations, genes which don't function at 100%. So she's very sensitive to a lot of these things. And yes, Natasha, go ahead.
And the thing is that it's not just one gene, right? And so
No.
there are so many different genes of detoxification. And unfortunately, almost all of mine don't function well or almost don't function at all.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start finding out, so, the most common thing people do nowadays is 23andMe. So you can easily use your 23andMe panel and get a detoxigenomic profile. And we can look at that and say, oh, look how many genes are functioning less optimally. And the more of these you have, actually, the worse it is for you, because now they all dysfunction together, and that sum total can actually be worse than each one not functioning alone. That's one thing. I'll just say something. The year I did pharmacology in med school is the year the cytochrome P450 started to become noted. That's how long ago this was.
Oh, wow.
But it was only talked about for drugs. And that's the important point I want to make here. So every time you take a blood pressure pill, a diabetes medication, a Tylenol, or you eat food that has red food dye and some chemical or preservative, or you clean your toilet bowl with something and you breathe in those fumes and the chemicals get into you, or whatever all these toxins are. You put the cream on your face and it's got parabens and SLS and sulfates and all of those things. They all get into your liver and they have to go through cytochrome P450 enzymes. Okay, and when that happens, you need these enzymes to be working efficiently. Back in the day when it was first discovered, nobody thought about it in that it works for other things as well. They only talked about the cytochrome P450 enzyme system to do with drugs and drug metabolism and drug pathways. So we knew that if somebody was a smoker, for example, and they took an anti-tuberculosis drug, we had to change the dose because the smoking changed how this cytochrome P450 enzyme system works. So that concept is validated in medicine. It's very unfortunate that the literature, and that's what Dr. Carr and I do in our study club. Dr. Carr scours the daily research that comes out, anything that's relevant to the things we do with patients. And that's how we stay updated and we have our discussions and improve our clinic protocols and things that we're implementing. But the data is there. The research is very clear that toxins affect human health. And yet you have all of these doctors, specialists, and I'm going to throw cardiologists into the mix as well right now, because there isn't a single cardiologist I know who talks to their patients about lead. Yet there's an NIH study that shows that when you account for all of the other factors associated with high blood pressure, so you take away obesity, smoking, sedentary lifestyle, blah, 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 blah. You take all of that away. having a body burden of lead increases your risk by over 800%. 800% for having high blood pressure. So should we not remove the lead and let the blood pressure go back down to normal instead of throwing pills at this person? Now, that's not to say we don't write medications. If you have high blood pressure, of course, I'm going to treat your high blood pressure, but at the same time, we're going to go dig deeper and find out, why do you have the high blood pressure? What else is going on and contributing to your risk for heart disease and heart attacks that we can fix or remove from your body or improve in how your body works and functions, so that your disease burden corrects itself and that you live a longer, healthier, more productive life, because that's the goal. It's health span, not lifespan, because your health span can end here and your lifespan can end here, and all of this time can be very miserable. You know, you could be in a long-term care facility with someone wiping your bum, changing your diaper, using a lift to move you. I see this when I work in traditional medicine and in the ER, and then in the small hospitals I work at, we look after extended care and long-term care. And you know, when you look at people with cataracts, heavy metals have been implicated in the accelerating cataract formation. So this is why this is so important. And when doctors laugh at my patients when I put them on a detox, which I got to find a different name for, because what we're doing is, when you look at this, see, it says phase 1, oxidation, every process mentioned there, oxidation, reduction, hydrolysis, hydration, dehalogenation, all of those processes, yes, they're directed by the genes, but then your body needs nutrients to make these processes work. So the toxin enters, it goes through an enzyme system the same way drugs go through it. They become intermediary metabolites. I'll use Tylenol as an example. Forget fat-soluble toxin. Take Tylenol. When it goes through phase 1, the intermediary metabolites are actually stronger than what you put in the first place. Yeah. Then that goes into phase 2, and now you can see sulfation, glucuronidation, glutathione. Remember, I mentioned glutathione. So now we need glutathione as part of this process in phase 2 to get it eliminated via urine, bile, and stool. But your body has to do the work. If it's not able to do the work, then you're going to accumulate these toxins inside of you, and collectively over time, you're going to get more and more until you get to what I call the tipping point. So that's the tipping point. Whether it was tipped over by having high stress that decreased your nutrient supplies and your nutrient stores, or whether it was one more toxin or something, but you get over into that tipping point and then your health falls apart, or you start to see diseases forming. Right, Dr. Carr? Yeah. So you can see there, nutrients needed for that process, nutrients needed for that process. So when we tell you, well, I have everybody do a reset is what I call it, but a cleanse is a really good name for it, because what we do is we provide you with a medical food that contains all these nutrients to enhance phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification in the liver to deal with all of these toxins. And I will tell you one thing, I love that it says fat soluble toxins here, because one of the reasons people struggle with weight loss before they reach their tipping point is that your body makes fat to store the extra toxins to protect your cells from the impact. So if mercury or lead was going to impact how your body can make energy, your body will rather make fat, store the toxin in there so that you can continue to make brain energy, heart energy, muscle energy, and whatever, until there comes a point where there's just too much. Right now, I'm not saying this is the solution for every person challenged with weight, but it's a very important solution to address if you are challenged with extra body fat, especially if you're that kind of person who says, I'm stuck with these last 10 pounds. I'm stuck with these last 10 pounds. Those last 10 pounds are usually because your body doesn't want to let go of the toxins to pollute you. It'll impact your brain function. You get brain fog, you get memory issues, you get mood issues, you get fatigue. right? You get joint pain, inflammation, your blood pressure goes up, you start even heart disease, which is what we're talking about today, you're starting to accelerate these processes inside your body. So people say, well, a detox must be like, I always tell patients, detox is not like Drano. You don't need to be stuck to a toilet. You're not gonna, have this sudden cleansing of your bowels. I'd like your bowels to work healthy, because we said toxins are eliminated by urine, bile, and stool, right? And so you've got to poop. If you poop once a week or every other day, that is not okay. Not okay. The ideal pooping schedule for you, I know Dr. Carr gets so shy when I say all these things, but the ideal pooping schedule is 3 times a day. If you have a healthy microbiome and a healthy gut, which is essential and foundational to all of your health, then you must poop regularly and daily. And once a day is not enough. So a detox is simply giving your body these nutrients that you see at the bottom of your screen and some others that facilitate your liver's phase 1 and phase 2 pathways to work more efficiently, so that you can process out and eliminate the toxins that you've accumulated over your lifetime. And if you tell me I don't need to detox, I will ask you where you live, because if you live in that glass bubble Michael Jackson created, fine, but you have to have always lived in it. It means you should never have traveled on an airplane. You should never have eaten food that was sprayed with herbicides and pesticides. You should never have used anything other than, let's say, coconut oil from your hair down to your toes, right? But if you've used any of these things and you've lived on planet Earth, you have toxins in you. It doesn't mean that they're affecting you physically in a way that you can see, but they can be affecting you in ways that you might not see. So you're not sleeping as efficiently. Did you know that most of your brain is fat? And so fat soluble toxins will often go and sit in the brain. And people are amazed after they do the 28-day reset I put them on, how much better their brain works. They notice the energy. The other thing, Dr. Carr, is they don't notice weight loss as much as shape improvement. And they'll say, look at my belly, it's flatter, and my waist is more defined, and yeah, my clothes definitely fit better. And then as they proceed past week 2 and week 3 and 4, then they're like, oh, my hair, skin, and nails are amazing. My hairstylist couldn't believe how quick my hair grows. Well, mine tells me all the time, and I know now that I color it how fast my hair grows. Why is that? Because your body is now getting the food and the nutrients it needs. It's not busy dealing with toxins. We're facilitating processes with functional medical food. Functional meaning to allow your body to function better. So hopefully that gives you a really good idea of what a detox or a cleanse or a reset is, and why we do it with every single person. The other thing that it does very well is, last week I said, hormones work like a lock and a key. So the cell has a receptor, and then the hormone says, make energy, burn fat, go to sleep, right? And when we have toxins, they get in the way of the hormone receptors, and then the hormone can't work. So this is oftentimes where patients will say, I'm so sure my thyroid is off. I know I have hormone trouble. I have all the symptoms. And then you do the test and they say, but my doctor said my tests are all normal. Well, how can you have the hormone and all the symptoms of deficiency? This is one explanation, that you have it and you cannot use it. So doing a 28-day metabolic reset, which I'm happy to provide for you if you just pop us an email and say, I want to do that. We have a beautiful guide for you. We have lots of instructions and booklets, and it's a very simple process. Then I have patients who say, I could never do that. And do you know why? Because one of the things that plug up these enzyme pathways is found in your coffee, so caffeine. And then the other thing that's really upsetting to hormones and your liver is alcohol. And Dr. Carr and I, it's like wine is our toxin of choice. We've kept it in and we work so hard to get rid of, like Dr. Carr carries a glass water bottle or a stainless steel water bottle. I'm not as obsessive, but I do drink filtered water in a wine glass so I can pretend I'm drinking wine. But you know, alcohol is a really tough one for people to give up. And I'll tell you this, for some people, especially those of us like me who have multiple genetic aberrations that are pathways that aren't working, you keep a bit of alcohol or a bit of caffeine in and you don't open up those pathways as efficiently. I can tell you because I've tried every which way to get around it. And some people can do a little bit and still get good results from their reset. But for the most part, if you're going to do it right, do it well. And then again, you know, there's every variation in between, where I have a lot of patients who will take the medical food and support the pathways and continue doing those things as well, but they still see some of the benefits. So I will say to you, if you can't stop alcohol for 28 days, maybe we have to talk a little bit more in depth. And I will say this much, Dr. Carr experimented on my behalf with these wine proxies, because we were really hoping, see, I love wine, not merely for the relaxation. In fact, I've always loved wine, and it's only through COVID I wanted the relaxation benefit more. You know, I love the smell. I can sit there and just take in the different notes and aromas, and it's exciting to me, and it's like coffee. You know, it's got to have the earthy notes, and I do that. So I always said, if you could make a wine for me that didn't have alcohol, but it tasted like wine, sign me up, because I would never need wine again. And then through COVID, you know, you're on edge, and now all this other stuff that's going on, and you're like, oh my God. And wine definitely gives you that, well, whatever alcohol of choice you have. But I will tell you one thing, alcohol really affects your estrogen balance. Dr. Carr and I have a wonderful video on estrogen and alcohol, but without lecturing you too much, because we're as guilty. The sad part is, don't try the wine proxies. They're awful.
Thank you, Natasha. So
just do without.
Just a few comments I wanted to add to this. So one of the things is these phase 1 and phase 2 detoxifications. As you can see, we've been talking about these genetic variations which you may have. Now, one is you may not know your genetic information, but if you don't know your genetic information, can you still go ahead and do a medical detoxification? I don't want to say detox. Yes, the answer is yes, because we are not using some potentially toxic prescription medication. You can see a whole bunch of nutrients here. Now, the other thing is, many of you are probably thinking, I'm already supplementing, I eat very clean, why do I need a medical detoxification? So that is where there is a concept of targeted supplementation. Now you can see that some of a whole bunch of nutrients like B2, B3, B6, B12. So studies have shown that some of those genetic pathways, if they are not working very efficiently, giving a higher dose of these nutrients can make them work better. So the flip side to it is none of these are potentially toxic medications. So they are not going to put you into another kind of toxicity. So yes, the dose does matter here. So the targeted supplementation versus just meeting the RD. That is one thing I wanted to highlight.
And Dr. Carr is our expert in targeted supplementation. She dedicates a lot of time into what dose, how much, what kind. And, you know, the one thing I wanted to point out here is methylation. You can take B complex, you can take B12. I've seen this a lot. And if you're a poor methylator, which we can tell from some blood tests for the most part, not precisely for everyone, but we start with the most basics because that's cost effective for our patients. Mm-hmm. And many people need methylated B vitamins, and it doesn't matter how much spinach. Dr. Carr, you're one of those, right? You eat your spinach and you eat your green.
I have the variation, so I need the
must take methylated Bs. It's like you can't get it from food because you just cannot use it. You don't have the genetic ability to do that. right?
So,
So
one more thing, Natasha, I wanted to mention, because we were talking about detoxification. So this same liver detoxification pathway is also the detoxification pathway for hormones. And Dr. Iyer mentioned, constipation, estrogen metabolism and constipation are intimately related. So if you have constipation, you're getting now estrogen back into the body. So that is, without good gut health, hormone therapy is not going to work, number one. Number
yes,
two is the estrogen metabolism pathways, if they are not efficient, they would raise your risk for breast cancer. Number three, some of the same estrogen pathways, which the hormone estrogen in your body, the one you make and also the one that you can use as a cream, that detoxification pathway is also used by a whole bunch of hormone disrupting chemicals. So if, for example, let us say one of those pathways is not working well, and that same inefficient pathway is being overloaded by hormones, by a whole bunch of endocrine disrupting chemicals coming from
lipstick
your
and
skincare and
face
everywhere,
cream.
you can understand what is going to happen. So that is something very important to keep in mind. And because in the interest of time, I'm going to rush through a little bit, because we said, how will you know if you have these? Number one, for many of them, we don't have like a specific blood test to tell you, yes, you have high levels of dioxins or phthalates or this or that. Some of them we do. But
Well, there are tests, sorry to interrupt you,
yeah.
Dr. Khan. There are tests that you can do. They're private tests from the US.
Mhm.
I don't use them routinely because they're very expensive. When it was $300 easily, I'd order it on everyone, and you can find that. And then what I loved is you can see which categories people are accumulating more. Is it the phthalates and the benzenes and the toluenes or the styrenes, and then you know how to guide them, or is it other stuff? But right now, I just say to them, you have it.
Mhm.
If you're here to see me, you have it. Just do the cleanse.
Yeah.
Just make your body get rid of it. But yes, sorry to interrupt. We do.
Sorry.
It's not shown on our routine blood test. Like for
No.
my son,
That is what I
on
meant.
routine
What I
blood
meant
test.
is it's not a simple blood test which will tell you. But more importantly, once you find out that you have these, hormone disrupting chemicals, but there's so many, it's impossible to know about all of them. The other thing is, we don't have like, really high quality studies to show that if you do this, this is going to go away. But we do know that improving your medical detoxification pathways in the liver can help. But before that, number one is reducing your toxic burden. So one good website, because Dr. Iyer and I can talk until kingdom come, but a good website is ewg.org. So you can go there, check your skincare products and see whether they contain any toxins. And if they do, look for healthier options. Now, hairdressers are another group of people who are exposed to a lot of toxins.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because those like dental hygienists, hairdressers first, or hairstylists, and then dental hygienists are two of the sickest people that show up in my clinic. They have the most health issues and the worst amount of toxic burden. It's crazy. And then nail techs, right?
Yes. So some of those products, actually, many of them have said it is impossible to make them 100% toxin free and give you the results that you want. You want your hair to look nice and all of that. So obviously go for the ones with the least amount of toxins. Number one. Number two is, Natasha, in the interest of time, I want to move into heavy metal toxicity, because that
yes.
is
So
an
pick
area.
your poisons, know what you're negotiable on and what you're not negotiable on. And Dr. Carr and I have picked wine. Well, she gave up coloring her hair at the same time that I started coloring my hair. And so, there's some people who say, I'll never not do my nails, or I'll never not, but then you have to make changes elsewhere. And yes, you should do a detox at least twice a year.
Yeah.
You can do a formal good one for 28 days. And Dr. Carr, I'll challenge you and everybody else, because I don't remember when last I've been 28 days without wine. I've been 14 days on a modified, but 28 days, I don't know. So I think we should do it as a group and put it out there to say, hey, you guys, let's all do it together. I'm happy to run a Facebook group or some kind of private thing for us to make it through. I think we should absolutely do that. So once a year, you do a full reset, and then, in the second half of the year, do a modified 14-day. I take medical food every single day because of the extent of my poor detoxification pathways. So now about heavy metals. What are heavy metals, Dr. Carr?
So
What
heavy
are these
metals,
things?
I'm going to stop sharing the screen. So heavy metals are, and if anyone tells you that this detoxification and heavy metals and environmental toxins is a lot of rubbish, they haven't checked the data. So number one is indoor pollution has been, is regarded now as one of the major pollutions for increased risk for heart disease, dementia and everything. The next thing is heavy metals like lead. Dr. Ayers already mentioned that. Arsenic, cadmium, then mercury, of course, and copper. And there are lots and lots of studies. In fact, just recently I was reading a study this came out in the journal BMJ, which is a very respected journal, where they looked at several different studies, and these were the major ones. And in fact, some years ago, they actually looked at, there was a very famous trial called the TAC trial, where they looked at chelation for people who'd already had a heart attack. Now, what they found is chelation helped them a whole lot better. And particularly people who had diabetes and a heart attack, they actually benefited even more. So going to heavy metal toxicities, now here is where you can actually test for that. So Dr. Ayar, will you tell our audience, how do you test for heavy metals, and what can you do once you find out that you have heavy metals in your?
I will say this much. I really under test heavy metals. And the more we get into this, the more I realize, it's $100 for the test. I should be doing it on everyone, right? So here's the first thing. Because heavy metals are so destructive to your body's mechanics and how your cell machinery can work, your body doesn't let it float around. You have an incredible body. And so this because people survive all kinds of weird crap, pardon my French, right? Or exposures, and you wonder, but the body is resilient for the most part in incredible ways. And so by design, when toxic molecules enter, like I said, for EDCs and stuff, you make fat. Here, your body buries these heavy metals because they are so toxic to cells, to cell function, that it will store it in your body's tissues. Bone is a common place, and this is why we see worsening of symptoms of heavy metal toxicity in the menopause and the andropause. And that's why we talked about hormones last week, and we're talking about toxins this week. So your bone breaks down faster when you start to lose your hormones. That's another reason we replace hormones in people, because we want to protect your bones. When you fracture a bone, you never go back to living a normal life ever again from osteoporosis, right? So as you're turning down bone, you're releasing more of these toxic molecules, these heavy metals. It can sit in muscle. It can sit in all sorts of tissue in your body, but your body hides it so that it can continue to function. But we will notice, and you will notice when you have it, that your functioning just gets less and less, and you call it getting old. Well, Dr. Carr and I are getting younger by the day, right? So that being said, how do we test it? We do a urine toxic element test. We give you a chelating agent. Why? Because your body hid this away. That's why my son's blood tests and urine tests were normal, right? You have to provoke it. So it's called a provocation test. And we give you these pills that are designed to, with metals, if you've done chemistry, things work with polarity and charges and all of that. So this particular medicine, which is sulfur-based, we give it to you, and it starts to say, hi, metals, come be attracted to me. And then it pulls it out from where it's hiding. And then you end up peeing it out. Now, I'm sorry, I don't use medical terms, you guys. Like, I just want you to follow what I'm saying. We'll leave all the medical terms to Dr. Carr, and I'll just tell you about peeing. So you have to pee in a jug for 6 hours after you take this medicine, give it a shake, and then we give you all the things, and then you use a pipette, put it in there, and we send it to a lab in the US, and they test for heavy metals. Interesting thing. Yesterday, I was signing out a urine toxic element test, and this lady was very high for barium. And it's interesting because barium is not one you see very often, but when you see it, you kind of know what kind of testing does she, because you get barium swallows. So medical tests use barium. Medical tests use heavy metals. And we've seen some people who went for contrast CT scans and other testing, and then they have high gadolinium or one of these things. And see, we use it because we have to, but then no one's recognizing that you should be tested to see if it's stuck inside of you. Another one is Pepto-Bismol. It contains heavy metals that can sit in your body. People drink it a lot because the ad is so cute and you're sure it's going to work for everything, right? To do with the gut. So people drink Pepto-Bismol or whatever. But here's another interesting thing. One of my friends is a functional medicine doctor, and years ago, unfortunately, she had breast cancer, but even before that, we were testing her heavy metals, and she kept showing high at baseline for mercury. And I've had this in another patient who travels to Vancouver a lot. Fish, sushi, they love sushi. So they go for sushi every other day because they go out for lunch and the sushi place is close by, or you travel and you love your sushi. And since then, I've quit the sushi habit because the kids and I love sushi and we would eat out a lot. And, we tell pregnant women not to ingest fish like tuna and the bottom feeders who eat the smaller fish and they collect the metals. And that's another topic for a different day. But we tell pregnant women, don't eat fish containing heavy metals. More than once a week or 3 times a week initially or whatever. So you're telling that to a pregnant woman. So you're identifying that there's risk with heavy metals for the fetus. So why do we think it's not risky for adults? I never understood that question ever. So when you're not pregnant, you can eat as much as you want with a toxic metal in it. But when you're pregnant, just watch your baby and then avoid it. I don't know about this logic. Anyway, so there's all sorts of places you're still getting heavy metal exposure today. If you were born before 1980, there was lead in the paint, so every house had it. We had lead pencils. I used to suck on my pencil, and then we did this cool thing. We'd make track marks under our skin with, I don't know if you were crazy like me, but we would make these things and put the lead from the pencil underneath and tattoo our skin. Right? So And then if you had parents who smoked in the house and the car, who didn't at the time, or you went to bars and restaurants, or you smoked yourself, smoking is a huge risk factor for heavy metals, as are mercury fillings, which were very popular in the 70s and earlier. Right? And then now we have phased it out, but you'll find many a dentist, and I left 2 dentists because the first thing they said to me was what a bunch of baloney it was that I had concerns about having amalgam fillings. And I was like, I want them out. Well, why would we take a perfectly good filling out? There's no data to show that it's dangerous. Excuse me, don't be my dentist, right? So anyway, you can get toxic metals from many different places, and I haven't even covered them all. There's certain lead in pipes in old homes. So in any event, when you get your toxic element report, it will give you a very detailed response for all of the things you're high in, for all of the possible places it can come from. So it's very useful. The one reason I feel like I forget about testing heavy metals is when people come in, if I bothered them with a whole bunch of tests, I still cannot treat the results of the test. So what I do in the practice is say to them, you come in, you have a pile of symptoms. I use a free thing called a toxic screen. It's a questionnaire which we can send to anyone who's interested. And on that toxic screen, there's a whole bunch of symptoms you can check off. And what we know from experience, and not Dr. Carr and I, but somebody came up with this after years and years of working with patients, that there's these constellations of symptoms that when people have them, they have a higher toxic burden. And so the first part of the screen is looking for, heavy metals and general pollutants. And then the second part of the screen focuses more on these POPs and the more in-depth pathways that give you things like fibromyalgia, chronic sensitivities, asthma, allergies, like all sorts of symptoms can show up when you have toxins and heavy metals. But the screen gives us a guide and we start working with you. And then I tell patients, each time we reach a stumbling block, we do another test, right? And so a lot of times it's the cost, but now I'm thinking, for about $100, it's worth doing way more often than we're doing right now.
So, Natasha, I'm going to interrupt you there because we are going to run out of time. I just wanted to mention one thing about heavy metal testing. This is not relevant to the audience here in Canada, but I am getting a lot of my patients from India who come to me. So in India, you don't need a doctor to recommend a test for you. So many of them come with a blood test of heavy metals. And I just wanted to mention that doing a blood test for heavy metals is not going to give us, that's the reason Dr. R explained, it's not going to give us relevant information at all. It has to be a urine provoke test. And that is the reason, and I have to keep on explaining to them, don't go by that blood test. You just got the test done because the lab offered it to you because it came as a part of a package. But that's just an aside. The next I wanted to, in the interest of time, one thing is, if any of you have questions, number one, you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you, or feel free to type in the chat box. And very briefly, because we don't have much time, Natasha, will you explain when should people go in to remove the heavy metals from their body? Because it is not an easy process. And
no, I think we should skip that one because we have time. We have no time left, just because you cannot do this on your own. You need somebody who specializes in the field of chelation. This is why people are so afraid of it. When I was doing my functional medicine training, I was sitting next to a doctor whose father ended up in the ICU after chelation.
After chelation, yeah.
And he had kidney failure. And so he was like, I don't even want to learn this stuff. Like, I'm not even going to listen. I'm leaving. And I said, no, the bottom line is not anyone can just give you a chelation. Right. And then there are people who do all these things. It's, whether it's Botox and filler that people are doing in their basements, watching it on the internet, or people driving to your house, I think you must choose your providers very carefully. Yeah. And in our clinic, we work with Dr. Arado, who's a naturopath. I am trained to do chelation, but I do defer all chelation protocols to him, only because he does a lot of it and I want to focus on the hormones. And that's what we do in our practice. I know how to do it. I can do it. I'm not saying I've never done it before. I'm not saying I've never seen patients and done it before. But in our practice, whether it's our 3 acupuncturists or whether it's Dr. Carr and I, we pick our areas that we want to focus and know really, really well and do a lot of it. And then we pick our team so that, like Dr. Carr and I can do nutrition coaching, but we have Michal because she's dedicated her life to functional nutrition and knowing every detail about food. The things that Michal can tell you about food, Dr. Carr and I cannot tell you about food. We can coach you on weight loss, fat burning, eating for energy. We can coach you on your microbiome and all of those things. But she dedicates every single day of her life to it. And so that's what we're doing in our practice, where we work together to bring you the best of the best in our approach and micro specializing. But chelation is an intense process. It can be very gentle if you use herbal formulae and nutrients, but that takes a long time. That's the route I chose after I got my metals taken out. partly because I didn't want to stop drinking wine. Not that you have to give up wine forever, but there's a protocol. And so for these days, it's just best to let your liver rest and be clean, you know, getting rid of metals instead of putting competing toxic substances in. But it is a more intense process. Then there's the IV chelation and the other oral chelation that we can do. And for different people, we'll pick based on one, their state of health and how they can cope. If your body's not going to cope, we're not going to do it. We're going to do it when you're ready. And so there's so much more to say, but we're going to end it there.
So if you have any questions, please feel free to either raise your hand or type in the chat box or in the Q&A. And I'm going to pause a little while because, Natasha, we've given so much information. People may need a little time to, you know, think. So I'm going to pause right there and drink my tea.
Oh, I'm done my coffee, my decaf coffee, and now I'm done my wine. Okay, I don't see any more questions, and we have anyway come almost to the end of our time. So toxins coming from tea, you know, so there was this place in India where I was ordering tea from, and I asked because I found out, you know, tea has a whole lot of toxins because of the pesticides and stuff. And heavy metals, yeah.
Yeah, and heavy metals as well. So I asked, you know, how do you ensure that, you know, so they said, we tell the owners of the, I said, just telling them, like, how is that going to work? So
I'm so glad you pointed that out, because I just made an Instagram post. I had to get my car looked at this morning before I came in, and they had the TV on, which I never watched. I don't even have TV in my house. I have a TV, but we'll pick from Netflix or something. And so Rachel, what's her name? Rachel Ray? Anyway, whoever, the person teaching us how to cook, like, really good meal. And then she has this bottle of organic canola oil right there. And you know, I tried to snap the picture, but she picked it up and then put it down backward, and I couldn't get the picture, but it was organic canola oil. Now, we know canola oil is the worst thing you can use. You should never eat it. It's in every single restaurant. So everywhere you eat out, you are being exposed to these oils. Right? And so we want you to avoid these oils. But when somebody puts an organic label on it, you think it's okay to eat or to consume, right? And so
virtuous halo
marketing. Just beware of the marketing. And that's the point. You need to research what you get, where you get it from, and what you put in your body. And you can be lackadaisical about it, but then your health will be lackadaisical as well. Because good health comes from being on purpose with a lot of things. And it's up to us to do it, because we can't trust the person that FDA approved something or put the heart healthy stamp on it. For God's sake, don't do anything that has a heart healthy stamp on it.
Yeah. And very important when it comes to toxins is, you know, many of these skincare companies who promote the pink ribbon for breast cancer, they have a lot of hormone disrupting chemicals in their products. So anyway, our rant is over, and thank you everybody for investing your time with me and Dr. Iyer, and we will definitely meet you all again sometime in the future. We don't have another one planned right now, but you'll receive the information all the same, and you'll receive a recording tomorrow in 24 hours. And thank you very much.
Thank you all so much.
Bye,
Bye.
Natasha.